Hi everyone, this is Kai with SeriousWatches and welcome to this video. And this one is all about euros, dollars, yens, rubles, you name it, money. And we get quite a few inquiries from customers. Is a watch worth it? Why is a watch so expensive? Why is a watch so affordable? Well, in this video we're going to try and explain some of the factors that come into play when it comes to the value, or better said, the price of a watch. Enjoy. A watch movement is a very important part of a watch because it's the engine. I mean, a car is nothing without the engine, so the same thing goes for watches. The movement is also a factor that plays a significant part in the pricing of the watch. A battery-powered quartz movement tends to be a lot less expensive than a mechanical movement. And even within mechanical movement, there's a wide range in terms of pricing and in terms of quality. So simply said, there's three things that impact, aside from being a quartz or mechanical movement, three things that impact the price of a movement. The first thing is complications. A watch can be more complicated. It can have a power reserve indicator. It can have a tourbillon. It can have a moon phase. All these complications are, well, the more complicated a complication is, the more expensive it is. So that's a factor that can play a huge role, because try and find a Swiss-made tourbillon for less than 15,000 euros. It's nearly impossible. So that's a factor that can make a watch a lot more expensive simply with a single feature. Another factor is the finishing level and the accuracy of the watch, how well the watch is made, because most more affordable watch movements have very wide ranges of accuracy that are allowed by the specifications. Now, if you want a COSC, COSC certified watch, it tends to be hundreds of euros more expensive than a watch that has a range of, say, plus 40, minus 20. And aside from even the accuracy, the finishing level of a movement, how well it's made, how well it's polished, how the finishing is on the movement, will all contribute to the price. And lastly, the country of manufacture. Where is a watch movement made? Because a Swiss-made movement, even if it's very similar in terms of specifications to, say, a Japanese movement, will be more expensive solely based on the country of manufacture. Swiss-made products, it's a prestigious thing, tend to be more expensive. So that's another contributing factor when it comes to the movement. So does the movement make the watch? Is the movement the determining factor when it comes to price? Well, I would say it's important, because anyone that is a watch enthusiast will care about the watch movement. Now, would I rather have a very ugly watch with a beautiful movement or a pretty watch with a standard movement? I would still opt for the last option. So it's a bit personal how important that movement is, but it is a very important factor when it comes to the pricing of the watch. Finishing level. Finishing level is another thing that can play a huge factor in how expensive a watch is, because a lot of finishing is actually done by hand on a watch. So that means that there's labor costs involved, skilled craftsmen doing it, and sometimes these details that all these finishing, this finesse goes into, can be very small or not even visible with the naked eye. You would need magnification to actually see it. For example, a Grand Seiko watch has a tendency, they polish the underside of the hands with some models. I mean, that's finishing level that you can't even see, but you know it's there. And that can be a beautiful thing, but it's also extra expensive. I love Grand Seiko myself, especially for that, because they go the extra mile. They go as far as they can go with the finishing level. And that's, again, an expensive thing, and you may not see it offhand, where if you see a watch on someone's wrist, you will likely not see that the underside of the hands are polished, or how finely the polishing has been done. You know, these are rather subjective things that truly come to light when you think about it, when it's in your head, when you know a product is made to a certain standard. Even with movement finishing, sometimes there's a beautiful, gorgeous movement, and it's covered by case back that isn't even see-through. So you can't even see the movement, but you know that there's a beautiful, gorgeous movement in there. Wasted money? Well, it depends. Again, it depends on how much you value it. I personally love it. Would I pay twice the price for a very well finished watch versus a good well finished watch? I would be on the fence. One thing I do wish to note is that finishing when it comes to straps is a different thing, because you do want a very comfortable strap, a strap that someone saved money on. I wouldn't buy. So a well finished strap, personally, I would spend the extra money on. Would I go for Grand Seiko level finishing or even higher level finishing on every watch? Personally, not really. Just as long as it's well made and that you can't see any flaws or any deficiencies with the naked eye. Gold, diamonds and platinum, all things that make a watch very expensive. And I mean, I don't have to tell you that. You can imagine it for yourself, that when gold costs more than 30 euros per gram, that it will make a watch more expensive if you put 50 grams in there. So I'll not waste your time discussing that. But on a more practical level, there's also materials such as sapphire glass, ceramic bezels, titanium, that can make a watch a lot more practical without making it all too blingy. So when you're considering a watch, do note that sapphire glass and all the things that may make a watch more practical also cost money, but they're a very reasonable investment. So I would always say don't skim on something like sapphire glass if you have the option just to save $50, because in the end it will pay dividend to invest in a watch that will be more durable. So those are well-made investments. A gold watch, well, that depends on you, because that's really subjective, with gold coatings being so good as they are. That's very much a thing that's in your head. Or of course the weight's a little different, it feels a little different. Of course you can glorify it all you want. I've got several gold watches myself and I love them knowing that it's gold. Rationally, not so much. So I would say focus on making sure that the specifications are right, that you have a good durable watch, and then if you have more money to spend, go wild with those diamonds. Now one of the more controversial parts, which is the fame, the name, how a brand makes you feel. Because that's a very, very subjective thing, and a lot of people will actually laugh about it. Rational people will not understand how a certain watch brand, how a certain brand can make you feel special. And there's actually a term for that. It's called Veblen goods, which are products where the demand actually increases if a brand increases their price. Because normal economics would say you lower the price, the demand increases, you raise the price, the demand decreases. But with these sorts of goods, the demand actually raises when the brand becomes more exclusive. Good examples are like Rolls-Royce cars, the Hermes Birkin bags, Rolex, certain sneakers that tend to sell for more than the recommended retail price. The demand is so great that the product becomes worth even more exclusive. And that's the thing that is with watches very common as well, because we all know the stories about Rolex dealers not having any inventory because it all sells out. And that's because the name is so strong. There's certain associations with it. But one thing that's very important is that you don't suddenly become a luxury brand. You do actually need to make a very good product, because no one will say that Rolls-Royce cars are rubbish, that they're not well made. No one will say that Hermes makes poor quality belts and bags, or, the quality is there. It takes a long time to achieve that status. And once it has that status, a certain product makes you feel part of a certain group, of a certain personal group. And also it feels like a sort of achievement, because once you have that Rolls Royce, you're the boss. If you have that Hermes belt, if you have that bag, if you have that Rolex, it makes you feel special, like you've achieved something, sort of getting like a diploma. Like I've got my high school diploma and I've got a Rolex, that's sort of, I could put that on my resume. So that's the thing with fame, and it's very hard to rationalize, because when you think of it, you can go out and buy a very good car or a very good bag. But it is there, and it can make you feel special. Not everyone. If you're a very rational person, you'll be like, I don't care. But a lot of people do feel special when they wear or use a certain kind of product, when they've achieved it, when they've saved up that money. Now, I've just mentioned the really big brands, the Rolls and the Rolex, etc. But this also goes on a more reasonable level. Even Every brand is trying to create a certain identity. They are investing in it. They're sponsoring athletes. They're sponsoring musicians to be associated with the Beatles, to be associated with a certain team. They're working hard on their brand. And that also costs money, because most micro brands don't do any of that. They just make a very good product. That means you're not paying for all the investing they're doing in society, in athletes, in sponsoring, in creating their brand. So rationally speaking, a micro brand will offer more value for money. And if you ask me, is it worth it to pay more for a Rolex? Well, it can very much be so, because it can make you feel more special. And ultimately, no one needs a watch in life. You don't need a watch. A watch is not a rational decision to begin with, unless it's like a G-Shock, which will last you a lifetime and will show you the time, which ultimately is the goal of a watch. But rather, you're buying a watch, you're buying something special to make yourself feel good. So it's a very subjective thing. So can I completely rule out the subjectiveness of brands and of what they stand for? Whether you feel like you're in a commercial in black and white driving a vintage car because you've seen that commercial and it makes you feel that way? Yeah, there's a lot to be said for brand identity and what they stand for. So is it worth it? Rationally, absolutely no. There's no way. If a brand has been around for 150 years, what does that mean for you? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Rather, if you can appreciate the history, if you can appreciate the pedigree, it can be worth it. So I'm a bit on the fence, because certain brands do make me feel good. And I still remember when I purchased my first very expensive watch, and I was like, I've achieved something. It gave me pleasure. And rather than trying to be rational about it, you do need to embrace it as well. So I would say brands and their identity and what they stand for, they are worth the price. Whether or not it's such a big increase, because some brands do increase the price a lot, that may not be worth it for you. So you need to think about it yourself. How do you feel about the product you're looking at and the brand and what they stand for? Where a watch is made has a very big impact on how much a watch will cost, in part because of labor, because labor can be more expensive in a certain country than another, but also because of prestige. Switzerland is a very obvious example. Switzerland has a lot of prestige when it comes to things like watches and knives and other things. So the prices will be higher because of that. Does that mean a Swiss product is always better than, say, a Japanese product? Or even more simple, what is a product made in a certain country? Switzerland has very clear laws when you're allowed to put Swiss made or made in Switzerland on a particular product. That's great, because you know what's up. You know when a product bears that name, what it means. Germany has very different laws. You can put made in Germany on a watch with a Swiss movement. You can put made in Germany on a watch that is made in Asia. That makes it more complicated, because you're expecting, when a product says made in said country, that it was actually made there. And even the Swiss laws, they just say 60% of the value. We've done a video actually about this, so rather than elaborating on this much further, we'll put up a link in the description or in the video, so you can check it out if you want to know more about that. But it does play a very important part in how much a watch will cost. So is the country of manufacture truly important when it comes to the quality of the watch? I wouldn't say so. But when we look back at the previous segment, the subjective element, how does a Swiss-made product make you feel, can make a big difference. So how much you're willing to pay for it, how much extra you're willing to pay for it, that's up to you. But the country of manufacture can make you feel more special, can make you feel better. So there's a value to that for sure. So now, to summarize all these subjects, I think there's one thing that really sticks out, and that's the subjective element. How do you like what? Do you like how a watch looks? How does the watch make you feel? How do you feel about the brand? How do you feel about, how do you think you will look wearing that watch? And if we're looking at it from a relatively rational perspective, and not the let's get a G-Shock perspective, but rather I want a mechanical watch because I like that particular sort of thing. I always tend to say that for about 300 euros you can get a good mechanical watch with sapphire glass, ceramic insert on the bezel. If you want a diving watch, you can get a good watch for 300 euros, perhaps even quite a bit less still. that does not mean that there's no market for anything above 300 euros, because everyone will value certain aspects more or less. In that way, a 1,000 euro watch can be the biggest steal of the century for one person and be completely overpriced for another. So that's the difficulty when you try and rationalize something when it comes to a very subjective product. Rational is the price and whether or not it's reasonable. Subjective is whether you actually like it. Because you can get a perfect watch on paper that has all the best specifications, the best price, but you just think it's not pretty, you don't like it. Well, in those cases, the watch is overpriced. So do I mean just go into depth and buy whatever you like? No, by no means. I mean, you still need to think about what you're doing and whether or not a product is overpriced, because there are overpriced products out there. There's some manufacturers that give their watch a very high MSRP, recommended retail price, and then give massive discounts to make it seem like it's a great deal and so on. Well, their discounted price is probably in line with the normal market value. So you do need to be conscious of what the product you're buying. Do your research, see what the brand stands for, see what reviewers say, make sure that you make a well-established purchase. Then you'll be able to tell whether or not a watch is overpriced for you. Because what is overpriced for you may not be for another, and what may be the best deal ever for you will not be a very good deal for another. So that's my main word of advice, is first thing, buy the watch that you like, that makes you feel good. And if you feel good, then the price is right. Thank you so much for watching. Tune back in for our next videos. Please do like and subscribe our channel. And if you disagree or agree, please do leave a comment. We always read the comments and we reply if it warrants a reply. So thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.